House to Home, presented by Remax Diamond Realty.
Happy Tuesday, and we are happy to see you. I'm Jason. She is Liz up there in the corner, and opposite her is Gina. We bring you information and news that hopefully you take to heart because, we work really, really hard at this program to make sure that the real estate market and all of the various ecosystem and inputs and everything like that makes sense to you, because that's what we're doing. And Gina, I know we're going to talk about a rather delicate situation right now that's kind of like unfortunately bubbled up, but we want to kind of like break that down and make sure everybody knows what's going on.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago on the front page of the Post, there's a story about a family, Mr. John and Elaine Santos, who they finally, after 20 years of going through the probate system, it took that long. There was many hurdles, many obstacles. A lot of money was spent from, there was, I think, 13 of them. And so over a 20-year period, their mom and dad's property was finally given to them. And one of the pieces, which ended up going to John because they split the property equally, but the piece that went to John is right on Wise Sing Song Road, but it's after, so it's fronting the main road, but it's after the area where the sewer lines. So basically the sewer lines are not in that spot. He fronts the paved road, but it's not, his property doesn't have access to sewer. And when he went to EPA, he was hearing in the news that you cannot get a building permit if your property is in the northern side of Guam and it is not half an acre. You cannot get a building permit. So of course it's hard to believe that could be that could be true. So he went and he verified it. He's met with Mr. Brian Bearden, and he actually has confirmed that because he got his property through the court, he will not be allowed to get a building permit to build a home on the property. And so
we're not talking about land that's all the way out, like in the jungle or in the sticks or on top of a cliff, like way off. I mean, Isangsong is a densely populated residential area anyway.
Yep. And he's fronting the paved road, and there's houses all around him. So, it's hard to understand that. And I think, on the front page of the Post, it said decedent estates. And I think Liz and I just want to boil it down so that we understand, that generally people, because if I had just seen that without being involved in this, I don't think I would have understood that. Right, Liz?
That's right. That's right. So it's unfortunate that, I've been talking to many families that, in fact, I just talked to someone just yesterday that is buying a piece of property because her cousin has to go through a medical treatment, and they're buying one of the properties that was a parental subdivision. And I was explaining to them the issues we're having with families trying to build on such type properties. And she has so many family members that have lots that are parental subdivision or decedent properties that were given by the court. See, here's the catch. We were taught that if the court deeds a piece of property and it's court ordered, that's law. However,
I would think that would take top priority because that came from the judge.
Exactly.
It's one thing for Gina to be my broker and for me to purchase property from Liz. It's another thing for,
Yeah, another thing, right? But
for his honor to say, like, this goes to you.
There are differences of opinion, right? But if a court has deemed this and has stamped it, this is a court order, you would think that this would be honored and processed, especially when there is a section in one of the laws that state that decedent map and parental subdivisions are to be honored. But again, there seems to be differences of opinion at Guam EPA. So Gina and I guess, we're not going to stop. We want people to know there are issues if you own property in the northern area that are standing over the Guam waterlands, that there's interpretation of what you can and cannot do with your property. And we feel that there are other issues to look at versus their, the government's point of view. So I know there will be an uprising because the people I've spoken to want to know whenever this issue crops up, they're ready to stand full force to fight for their rights, especially in our culture. If your dad gave you property, Jace, and you want to build on it or give it to your child, you'll be darned if anybody's going to tell you, sorry, you can't do anything with it.
It's going to have to take a judge to separate those people.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, again, the way Chamorros are, like we're very, very humble. We respect the law, we obey the law, but also we're very proud. And I can immediately just envision, a local who is bequeathed property from, say, like their grandpa or their dad, just thundering away at like senators and saying, this is property that's been in my family for X generations, and I can't even do anything with it.
Yeah, and I think our pride is in our land, and the pride is in passing land on to our heirs. And to take that right away is wrong, totally wrong in our culture.
Gina, forgive me if I ask.
Jace, I just before I forget, it's even more messed up than that.
Oh gosh.
Because in this particular instance, you can have a parental subdivision right here, and they're allowed to build. And adjacent to that parental subdivision could be somebody who received their property through the court order, through probate. And this person can build, but this person can't. That is an unfair application of the law. So it isn't even where you're at. It's just the manner in which you received ownership. If you received your property and it was parental, your parents were alive, so they cut it up and gave it to you, and you're right next door. So if mine was through probate, a decedent map, and I'm right next door to Liz, literally right next door, and our properties are exactly the same size, she's going to be allowed to build and I am not. That is an unfair application or an unfair interpretation of the law. And what I want to tell people out there is, if you have a property that was given to you through probate, go down to the governor's office and talk to them, because they need to do something, because it is an unfair application of the law. There is no other way to describe it. It is unfair, unjust.
I was going to say, from my vantage point, and I am not a lawyer. I've never taken a pre-law class in my life or a law class, but I would say that definitely sounds, from our perspective and in the context of this conversation, that sounds like a major loophole and something that's got to be fixed. But at the same time, you can see where EPA is kind of in the middle, because they're hamstrung, because that's their Bible, like their code is what the law says.
But I think it's a question of interpretation. And even though, yes, at this point, Gina's right. Yeah, parental subdivision are allowed. But guess what? They're taking that away as well. They're making it even more difficult, even for parental subdivisions. So these are things that we're working on right now with one of the senators, Sabina Perez, to see what can we do to help correct it. And we've been going back and forth with verbiage to try to get this cleaned up. And, we're kind of knocking heads with government entities who see it one way and we see it another way. All we want is something to be fair. And it's something to be fair to the people. The environment is of course important. However, there are more ways to skin a cat and other solutions. And it's all about the solution on how can we make this work. It's environment versus the people. What's more important? We all have to live together. But at the same time is what's right and what's fair. And that's all Gina and I want to hound about.
Gina, can I just, I want to play devil's advocate for just a moment, right? I know that we've talked on this program of, there have been times during economic distress, and certainly that's the situation here now, or people get opportunistic. There are business people who may come upon a large sum of money and they want to buy up property in mass. Do you know, is anybody going around and basically saying, they're aware of this loophole and they're saying, I'll buy up property from landowners and from these parental subdivisions, and they're just stockpiling it to hold on at a future time at which the value will assumedly increase? Do you know, is that happening at all?
So that's the elephant in the room that nobody really speaks about, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Whoops.
But in my mind, and what Liz and I are observing, this is why we think this whole issue came up, because in the recent years, real estate, it has, number one, we all know how difficult it is to buy a large piece of property and subdivide it.
Mhm.
There are a lot of regulations. If somebody wanted to build homes and they got a large piece, and if you cut up property into more than 6 parcels, you're now in what is in the Guam law, this subdivision code, which has a lot of requirements. Every requirement that the government puts on a developer, cha-ching, Liz likes to use that, cha-ching, it means it's going to cost money. And you know what? Where does that money get passed to? Gets passed to you, gets passed to me, it gets passed to the person buying the home. And the other issue was, it takes an extremely long time to go through this subdivision process. I know that for a fact. Liz knows that for a fact. So what has happened is, in recent years, the larger developers who have the money to do this type of subdivisions have really kind of, they've either scrapped their project because they have a bad taste of, dealing with the government bureaucracy about being able to build is really difficult. And a lot of people actually, after waiting about 2.5 years, they just said, we're done. This is craziness.
Which is terrible for the economy.
It's terrible for the economy. Exactly. So you kind of wonder, why aren't there, Guam has a housing crisis. Why aren't there a lot of homes being built? Well, that's the reason. Nobody wants to sign up for that kind of BS. It doesn't matter how much money they think they make, because every year that goes by is eliminating on your profit. And nobody wants to do this other than Gura. Nobody does this for free. So the large developers who could do large tract of homes, they're just not in the picture. So then these small time developers who can only do maybe 2-3 houses at a time, what they've discovered is, hey, wait a minute, so much easier to buy a half-acre lot. I could do a parental. So I could take that. So this is a developer, his sole intent.
And there is no market, so they can set the price.
Well, what they're doing is they're making a market of buying these properties, like from Liz. They go to Liz, hey, Liz.
Right.
And Liz says, hey, I have 2,000 square meters. It's a parental. My parents gave it to me. And I'll be the developer. And I say, hey, Liz, let me buy that from you. And in my mind, I already know I'm going to cut this up. I'm going to build a house, and I'll be able to sell one of those houses. The other house, I'll probably keep as an investment. I'll rent it out for 5 years. So that's been happening for a few years now. And, of course, the government got wind of this, and they are like, this is not a typical Gina Campos. You're not a typical parental. Why doesn't it look like you're actually doing this so that you can give the property to your children? Why does it look more like you're actually just a contractor and you're just building homes to sell? And so I believe this got under someone's radar. And so now they're like, well, how do we stop these people from building on these properties? Because we want to try to stop building on quarter-acre lots when we know this is investment purpose. Well, you don't stop it by telling decedent people, people that are going to get their property from probate, you don't stop it by telling them you can't build. You stop it by changing that law if you can. And if you can't, then live with it. The government should figure out a way to make it easier for developers so they don't have to find the loopholes. That's what I think they should do.
It's really unfortunate.
Tell me how you really feel, Gina.
It's really unfortunate because if you stop developers from buying, then it stops the inventory of houses. So they're just trying to find ways to save money so they can add to their margin. And of course, right now, the prices continue to go up. Interest rates go up. Your buying power is reduced. So there's got to be different ways. I mean, Gina and I have talked about this. We have ideas of how the government could help, but someone's got to implement it. So there's lots of land out there that the government own. And Gina and I have talked about it, that if the government took some of this Arendu property or whatever property, gave an incentive to a developer, here, build low to middle income homes for our people. And therefore, you know, we'll have some joint collaboration of effort where it benefits the people. So there are solutions out there. It's just a question of someone having the gumption and the chutzpah to carry it through to the end.
And the cojones.
The cojones to make this thing happen.
Okay. The only solution I have right now is for the headache I've developed, just like talking about this with the two of you, is let's go get some aspirin, because I think and maybe a nice cup of coffee or something slightly stronger.
All right, I think we've given you enough of a headache.
I'm just doing this once a week. I can only imagine what professionals like yourself have to deal with this day in and day out. So,
and by the way, I want to make a comment. If you, the public, the community, if you see me and Gina out there at the store or wherever, ask us the question you want answered in real estate. I was at the store yesterday and someone said, please, I hope you don't mind. Can I ask you a real estate question? We do not mind. We're here to serve. So no matter where we're at, if you have a question, either call us, ask us in front of us. We don't mind. We want to help, period.
Even if you have say an armful of like cauliflower and kangkung, you're okay.
No problem. No problem.
I'll share the burden. You can help me carry it while we talk.
There you go. Okay, so as for right now, ladies, I'm treating for some extra strength Tylenol now. So I'll see you guys at the store. All right, bye everybody.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.